lot of what we do depends on training that we give to our employees, and the success in what we do depends on that training also.
I gotta get a second job.
Second job. Good morning.
Morning, sir. How are you?
Good.
I guess I gotta put my hard hat on. We in class or?
No,
Okay.
we're in class.
It's cool.
Yeah.
My head will get burned.
Today's training is on asbestos. This is our monthly training required by everyone to be done annually. Each subject, you know, we go through subjects each month, and that requires an annual training. Asbestos is a name given to a group of minerals that occur naturally in the environment as bundles of fibers that can be separated into thin, durable threads. And your sheet should say asbestos at the top. It's actually the slide, next one. These fibers are resistant to heat, fire, and chemicals and do not conduct electricity. For these reasons, asbestos has been used widely in many industries. Next slide. Types of asbestos. There are two types of asbestos. Friable asbestos can be crumbled, pulverized, or reduced to powder by the pressure of an ordinary human hand. Friable asbestos releases fibers into the air. Breathing in these microscopic mineral fibers over a long period of time is what makes people sick, even though symptoms may not show for decades. Non-friable asbestos cannot be pulverized under hand pressure. Next slide. Should say asbestos use. Asbestos was greatly used during World War II. Over the past 20 years, many asbestos abatement projects have occurred during building renovations and reconstruction. Asbestos has been used in many industries, including building and construction for insulation, roofing, fireproofing, sound absorption, ceiling and floor tiles, paints, coatings, adhesives, and plastics. Shipbuilding to insulate boilers, steam pipes, and hot water pipes. Automotive in vehicle brake shoes and clutch pads. Some waste management facilities accept asbestos-containing materials, or ACMs, from the abatement process for disposal. Next slide reads asbestos health effects. People may be exposed to asbestos in their workplace, their communities, or their homes. If products containing asbestos are disturbed, tiny asbestos fibers could be released into the air. When asbestos fibers are breathed in, they may be trapped in the lungs and remain there for a long time. Over a long period of time, these fibers can accumulate and cause scarring and inflammation, which can affect breathing and lead to serious health problems. People who become ill from asbestos are usually those who are exposed to it on a regular basis, most often in a job where they work directly with the material or through substantial environmental contact. Next slide, reading known carcinogens. Exposure to asbestos increases your risk of developing lung disease. The more sustained the exposure to asbestos, the greater the chance of developing harmful health effects. Asbestos has been classified as a known human carcinogen, a substance that causes cancer, by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, the EPA, and the International Agency for Research on Cancer. Lung cancer causes the largest number of deaths related to asbestos exposure. People who work in the mining, milling, manufacturing of asbestos, and those who use asbestos and its products are more likely to develop lung cancer than the general population. Mesothelioma is a rare form of cancer which is found in the thin lining membrane of the lung, chest, abdomen, and heart. Almost all cases are linked to exposure to asbestos. This disease may not show up until many years after asbestos exposure. This is why great efforts are being made to prevent school children from being exposed. Your next slide should read asbestosis. The other major health effect associated with long-term asbestos exposure is asbestosis. This is a serious, progressive, long-term, non-cancer disease of the lungs caused by inhaling asbestos fibers that irritate lung tissue and cause the tissues to scar. The scarring makes it hard for oxygen to get into the blood. Symptoms of asbestosis include shortness of breath and a dry, crackling sound in the lungs while inhaling. There is no effective treatment for asbestosis.
Shortness of breath.
Asbestosis continued. Many studies have shown that the combination of smoking and asbestos exposure is particularly hazardous. Smokers who are also exposed to asbestos have a risk of developing lung cancer that is greater than the individual risk from asbestos and smoking added together.
I don't think it's tobacco. I think it's the filter.
Made out of asbestos. Next slide, air monitoring. Waste Management has conducted industrial hygiene air monitoring at waste management landfills as part of its hazardous identification process. Average monitoring results indicate that drivers in landfill and disposal personnel involved in the asbestos management process are not exposed above the following OSHA limits. 0.1 cc's as an 8-hour time-weighted average, 1.0 cc's for a 30-minute excursion level. Additional monitoring of personnel may be conducted. If you want additional information, refer to the Waste Management Industrial Hygiene Program. Next slide. Vehicle brakes and clutches. Using asbestos was common in the past. However, it is no longer accepted in the industry. Waste Management does not purchase or use brake pads and clutches that contain asbestos. If you're responsible for vehicle maintenance, it's important for you to check all packaging and MSDS to ensure that this policy is being adhered to. If you're involved in purchasing vehicle parts, you must understand and follow this requirement. Next slide is 24-hour advance notice needed. Landfill personnel need 24-hour advance notice so that they can prepare the disposal area and have adequate personnel and equipment available to manage and immediately cover the asbestos waste. Next slide, waste management transportation procedures. Dispatchers, drivers, or supervisors who will be involved in the asbestos transportation process should make arrangements with the landfill at least 24 hours in advance. Drivers must visually inspect the customer's asbestos containers prior to hauling and verify that the asbestos is packaged correctly, which should be burrito wrapped. The containers are properly labeled. The asbestos waste is properly wetted and containerized. No liquids are leaking from the container, such as the roll-off box. No white or colored discharge from the box. If there are indications that there is a problem with any of the above, drivers should contact dispatch or their supervisor. The asbestos container should not be moved till the leak problem is resolved. Next slide, waste management transportation procedures continued. If the container is not totally enclosed, a non-porous tarp in good condition may be used to cover the top of the container before hauling. Drivers should stand upwind when opening containers for inspection, discharging containers at the landfill. Air monitoring conducted under the Industrial Hygiene Program indicates that exposure to asbestos fibers during the pickup, transportation, and disposal process are controlled well below regulatory limits due to waste management, asbestos management practices. Standard driver PPE is required, vests, gloves, etc. Voluntary use of respirators and other PPE must be discussed with your supervisor and be approved by site management. I know in the past we've done this and done the monitoring and never picked up anything. They did such a good job at packaging, and we were real careful in handling it that we never even got anything on our monitoring process. Next slide, waste management spill response procedures during transportation. Drivers must not attempt to clean up any asbestos spills, no matter how small they may seem to you. Exposure to asbestos can be life-threatening. To keep drivers safe, Waste Management Safety Services uses the services of trained and qualified contractors to clean up asbestos incidents. Although you are not required to clean up a spill, waste management drivers and other personnel must know how to quickly assess emergency situations and contact the appropriate responder. Next slide, landfill pit preparation. To determine the location, the following needs to be done. Make sure the location is not C&D location. Must be lined or class 3. And they're talking about friable asbestos. These are must-haves before determining location. Determining location by size amount of inbound load. Locate at least 100 foot downwind from the operations. Post warning signs at approaches to area 100 foot perimeter. Asbestos disposal area authorized personnel only. Position trench where truck drivers discharge their loads upwind. This trench should not be within 10 foot of base side slope or top of final elevation or within 5 feet of intermediate grade. Ensure spill control equipment, for example, fine water, spray, misting equipment is available. Next slide, covering the load. The load must be covered immediately after it is deposited. This is a must. Ensure that there is 6 inches of non-asbestos material ready to use as cover. Landfill manager must approve any exceptions. Next slide, loader operator. Loader operators should follow these steps when covering the disposed of asbestos. Meet driver at the disposal pit. Remain inside the loader with the windows up. Mark the load location with GPS. Signal driver to discharge the load. Monitor load being discharged. Remain upwind while drivers are discharging their load. Signal the driver once the load is discharged. Cover load using a minimum of 6 inches non-asbestos cover material or 12 inches of trash. Standard operator PPE is required. Next slide, emergency response team responsibilities for spills. The emergency spill response team should follow these procedures when a spill occurs. Get upwind of the spill, keep others away from the area. Report the asbestos incident immediately to Waste Management Site Management. Supervisor contact 3E Emergency Response Center at 800-360-3220. Contain the asbestos. To do this, contain the asbestos and prevent the material from spreading further if safe to do so. Use a roll-off tarp and cover the spilled asbestos material, which is the simplest method. Use a water hose to wet with a mist the asbestos material to keep it from blowing in the wind if available. Next slide, respirators. A respirator is a device that protects you from inhaling dangerous substances such as chemicals and infectious particles. Respirators are among the most important pieces of protective equipment for working in hazardous environments. Respirators work by either filtering particles from the air, chemically purifying the air, or supplying the clean air from an outside source. Respirators are selected based on hazards to which the worker is exposed. Next slide, respirator use. As an employee, you are responsible for wearing the appropriate respirator when and where the required and in accordance with the training provided. Informing site management of any respirator hazards that may not be addressed sufficiently, including any other concerns regarding this program. Maintaining a clean shaven face before respirator seals against the face for tight-fitting respirators. Next slide, respirator use continued. Use the correct respirator when necessary and follow the appropriate procedures for the use, care, inspection, and maintenance of respirators. Inspecting assigned respirators before and after each use for defects and storing respirators appropriately. Immediately notify site management if a respirator no longer fits or is not working properly so that a new one can be obtained. Next slide, respirator limitations. Not all workers can wear respirators. Individuals with impaired lung function due to asthma or emphysema, for example, may be physically unable to wear a respirator. Individuals who cannot get a good face piece fit include those individuals whose beards or sideburns interfere with the face piece seal will be unable to wear tight-fitting respirators. An adequate fit is required for a respirator to be effective. Respirators can be less effective if there is a problem with selection, fit, and use. Respirators may also be associated with communication problems, vision problems, fatigue, and reduced work efficiencies. And as you know, we're a C&D landfill. We don't take the non-friable asbestos, the friable asbestos, excuse me. The non-friable is considered a C&D material, and on occasion we have a load of that come in. I have a brother-in-law who has the asbestosis, and he, it impairs his breathing. He was a welder in the Navy, and That's where he got his exposure. And of course, I know he smokes too, so that probably adds to his discomfort. So anyway, anybody have any questions or comments before we?
It says right here, determine location. It says cannot go into C and D location, must be lined or class 3.
Right.
Now, how-
That's talking about friable.
But it doesn't say that.
Well,
I mean,
the training, the training is focused on friable, and I see where that could be a misunderstanding. But all friable is supposed to go to MSW or sanitary lined landfills. The only kind that can go into a C&D facility is the non-friable, which is not regulated, basically, is the way I understand it. All right, let's proceed to the quiz. Here at Fultondale, we only are able to take non-friable asbestos. That is considered a construction and demolition material in the state of Alabama. Friable asbestos we are not able to take. However, the guys are trained on it and versed on it and have a great awareness on how it is handled. We have some experience in the house. Several have handled friable asbestos in the past, including myself, and are very versed, and the others who have not are very good to ask questions, and very informative group, and therefore we feel like we are able to keep up on a lot of the topics, especially this. But just a little bit about Fultondale landfill.